PTSD. He said that I had been showing signs such as constant slight irritation, I was always on guard, easily startled, and that sometimes my hands would be quite clammy. He said that he had seen how, over the years, I began to lose my self-esteem. I began to take less interest in things that used to matter to me, like school, politics, and all the other cool stuff that I liked because, well, he thought that I was a cool kid. Right before he continued with his diagnosis, I stopped him. I said, "Doctor, I know that I've been in the Army for several years now, but I haven't seen a bit of war. How could I possibly have post-traumatic stress disorder?" After realizing my confusion, he quickly apologized and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't talking about that PTSD. What I actually meant was that you have post-traumatic slavery disorder." As he kept talking, I zoned out and began to realize that I was not traumatized because of any explosions, mortar rounds, or any time in combat similar to some of my brothers and sisters in arms. I was traumatized because I was conditioned to believe that due to my ancestry, I was only capable of rapping or selling drugs or playing some type of sport so that I could be firm in my identity. I had somehow believed in what John Burgess, a Reconstruction-era philosopher, had believed, that my black skin meant membership into a race of men which had never of itself succeeded in subjecting passion to reason, and which had never therefore created any civilization of any kind. I was manipulated to believe that regardless of the amount of degrees I received from any university, particularly Prairie View A&M University, which is of course the greatest place on earth, or how large my salary had become, my socioeconomic status could only amount to that of an ape, baboon, or anything strikingly similar to King Kong. The closest to human that I could become is that of Silas Lynch, the first black character in major film whose primary focus dealt with boobs, blonde hair, and blue-eyed women. After realizing my issue, I asked, "Doctor, what do I have to do to fix it?" He replied, "Well, it's actually quite true. First, you must address your symptoms. Check to see if you've been showing signs of self-destructive behaviors such as alcohol and drug abuse, suicidal impulses like being black near a police officer, don't shoot, or any other high-risk behaviors like not being able to breathe, or buying an Arizona and Skittles and walking home in a hoodie. After you assess your symptoms and figure out which directly apply to you, I have 3 things that you must do. First, control your identity. If you look through our American history and compare us to other cultures that have been plagued by this war of discrimination and prejudice, you will realize that they have grown substantially because they chose to identify themselves in some form or fashion. The early Irish migrators, who fled Europe during the Great Potato Famine in the mid-19th century, found solitude in identifying themselves as white Americans so that they could join the ranks of men whose ancestry included a particular type of lineage. The Eastern Asian immigrants, who rushed to California with high ambitions of finding their golden tickets, were not afforded the luxury of the Irish due to their less than European features. So they decided to remain inclusive within their own communities and eventually created a subculture that flourished. Now the U.S. Department of Labor reports that the median household income for Asians is roughly around $70,000, which just so happens to be the highest among all racial groups. Yet, the black community, our black community, with at least 4.5 million black men and women holding at least a bachelor's degree from a 4-year institution, struggles with a mere $33,000 average household income. We are not afforded the opportunity to become white Americans, but this does not exclude us from this land that we have bled and fought for. We were birthed from the bosom of our mother Africa, but we must not forget that we were fathered by this land of the free, our home of the brave. To my second point, control your economic capacity. My doctor then decided to enlighten me. We took a quick journey through history. He said, "Son, let's go back to May 30th, 1921, Greenwood, Oklahoma. There stood a community whose skin took a hue in which my tan couldn't reach and whose hair had a kink that even mine couldn't be. There stood the Negro Wall Street, the wealthiest black community in U.S. history. But on that next dreadful day, a series of violent riots and military-style attacks ripped us away from our constitutional right to be economically sound. Fast forward 18 months, New Year's Eve of 1922. A small city in Levy County, named after the beauty and abundance of the red cedar trees that house the upper middle class Negroes of Florida. The city that, despite racial tensions, was slightly more prosperous than the surrounding communities. The city that, as the clock counted down to celebrate a new year of life, was creeping into the massacre that would destroy it forever. 10. Fannie Coleman Taylor proclaims to be assaulted by a Negro. 9. James Taylor, her then husband, assembles a vigilante mob prepared for justice. 8. A Klan rally in the neighboring county receives a call to action. 7. Jesse Hunter is the Negro that is proclaimed to fit the description. 6. Tracking dogs were released into the woods to find said Negro. 5. 500 Klansmen were released and head to Levy County at the plea of James Taylor. 4. Sam Carter is pulled out of his home for questioning and is forced to search for Mr. Taylor. 3. Mr. Carter is then lynched while round after round and shot after shot pierced into his body and he is left for display. 2. Aaron Carrier is then pulled from his home, roped like a pig, and dragged 2.6 miles to Sumner, Florida. 1. Happy New Year. Please allow Mr. Carrier to kiss his wife because his life was saved thanks to the local sheriff. Before I go into my third and final point, I want you to look at me. Listen to my voice. Post-traumatic slavery disorder is not a disease that only plagues the black community. There is an invisible scar that is left deep in the minds of every citizen that falls up under the flag that also brightly shines red, white, and blue. It is imperative that you must act upon this final point so that we can all be cured by this disease. 3. Educate yourselves and educate your children on our history. Robert Penn Warren once said that history cannot give us a full program for the future. It can only give us an understanding of ourselves and of our common humanity so that we can better face the future. If we do not have a full understanding of our history, we are doomed to let this disease manifest and grow like a cancerous tumor that will eventually lead to our demise. With the words of the late Stuart Scott, I'll leave you with this. When you die, it does not mean that you lose to cancer. You beat cancer by how you live, why you live, and the manner in which you live. We can all choose to defeat our mental cancer, our PTSD, by choosing to live in love. Thank you.